So not that much to talk about in the news this week that I could see. So instead, I wanted to talk about how speech and the First Amendment have helped lead to the advancement of LGBTQ plus issues and protections in light of the fact that June is so it's almost Pride Month. So I thought this would be a great kind of introduction to that, especially since so many creators are going to be talking about their own. So I thought it would be only right to start off kind of Pride by talking about what gives us the right to talk about our identities and what kind of protections the First Amendment has granted us. So the First Amendment not only protects people verbal declarations, the things that they say, like how I'm saying things now. It also protects your free expression and your freedom of conduct. So this doesn't mean you can just do whatever you want and it's speech. It kind of is talking to or referring to kind of conduct that allows you to express your political or ideological opinions. So, for example, I'm wearing a rainbow beret. I'm choosing to wear it as a political statement, affirming kind of people who fall under the rainbow flag, like myself. Of course, you could wear this and it not be a political statement. You could just wear it because you like the rainbow. But whichever. One expresses a political and ideological concept, and that would give it more protection under the First Amendment. So the First Amendment and LGBTQ plus issues. I know it's not the first amendment we think of when we think about LGBTQ plus advocacy. We often think about the 14th Amendment and the way that that has led to the advancement of equality under the law. And that's because of the recent Supreme Court case Obergefell, which allowed same-sex couples to marry the people that they love, the same way that a straight couple could get married under the law. But before that, the First Amendment has been giving LGBTQ plus people the ability to advocate for their beliefs and advocate for their existence since the 1970s. So I wanted to talk about a few of those cases. I'm going to be looking down at my phone at some articles. I'm going to be linking those in the description after this video wraps up. But if you're interested in following along, it's from the American Bar Association and free speech, LGBTQ rights, and the First Amendment, I think is the name of the article. So let's hop into it. So the first thing I kind of want to mention is the chilling effect. So the chilling effect is something very specific to the First Amendment. So the chilling effect refers to actions taken that would make people afraid to voice their political or ideological opinions. Specific kind of political. This is only a thing for the most protected speech, which is your political voice and opinion. So something that would be a chill factor would be if after you say something, you know you're going to get in trouble for whatever you just said. Or you're going to face adversity because of what you said. So for example, if I said, if I did a coming out speech and I said I'm bisexual, that's school because I knew teachers were openly homophobic. I didn't think that I would get, the same amount of scholarships as I had gotten had I been out at the time. This was 6 years ago now, 6 or 7 years ago. So I was concerned about what coming out would do for my ability to receive an education. So those would be like chilling factors. And when there's enough chilling factors in place for things like coming out, which is a politically charged action, then whatever is called whatever that chill factor is would be unconstitutional because it's infringing on my First Amendment rights. So we're going to get to how this applies more specifically in a moment. But first, I just wanted to read a little bit from the American Bar Association. So, quote, for LGBT people in particular, speech and expressive conduct are important to their ability to affirm their identities, exercise autonomy, and participate equally with dignity in society. Courts recognize that speech or expression that discloses a person's sexual orientation or gender identity, sometimes referred to as coming out speech, is a profoundly valuable viewpoint entitled to First Amendment protections. For example, courts have held that coming out as LGBT to an employer is speech, and similarly, that students' desire to engage in conduct that reveals their sexual orientation. This organization of the University of New Hampshire University because the student group allowed gay students to express themselves, it allowed them to come out, and it allowed them to be out. So not to say that they're gay, but actually, date people of the same sex, go to participate in activities that affirmed that identity. I know at my school, in college, there was a student group that threw a gay prom by an LGBTQ plus organization, and that was very affirming to people, especially my age, who weren't allowed really to bring same-sex partners to school prom. So not only did it allow us to, bring whoever we wanted to prom for the first time, but it was also kind of a political statement, kind of affirming the need for schools to allow everybody to bring whomever they want to prom, and not discriminate because of sexual orientation. Similarly, it doesn't just extend to LGBT people or students. Transgender people are entitled to the same protections. So measures that target a person's disclosure of their transgender status, so for example, their ability to say I am trans, for adverse treatment are content-based restrictions on speech. The American Bar Association goes on to say that your ability to express your gender as you please, as it affirms your gender identity, is also considered free speech as part of conduct and expression. So for example, if you're a trans person, you're a trans woman, for example, and you want to wear dresses and skirts, your employer couldn't really prevent you from wearing dresses or skirts unless there's a ban on every single person, no matter their gender, on wearing skirts or dresses. Basically, everyone has the same rules. So you could have a rule that says all dresses need to be longer than knee length, but it would apply to every person in the building. You couldn't have a rule saying only girls can wear skirts and they must be knee length or longer. So many of the landmark cases that involve the First Amendment and LGBTQ plus protections happen in education, which if you've been following this channel's Free Speech Fridays, that's kind of the focus, free speech and education. The cross-section, that's kind of my wheelhouse for my master's degree. So that's what I focus on usually. And here it works out because that's where a lot of these cases are. So for example, in Weaver versus Nebo School District, in 1998, a district court in Utah upheld the First Amendment right of a public school teacher to talk about their same-sex relationship, the way that teachers who were in opposite sex relationships were able to talk about their partners. So this kind of is talking about if I were to just talk about Stan, I'm in an opposite sex marriage. I could do that, as a teacher, and nobody would bat an eye if I were just to casually bring it up, like, oh, well, what did you do this weekend, Mrs. So-and-so? I could be like, well, me and Mr. So-and-so went to, vacation until the recent Supreme Court case from last year that I talked about, and a video that I will also link in the description. If you were dating someone of the same sex, your school might not let you talk about your relationship. And the First Amendment is actually what allows teachers to do that now, both in the recent Supreme Court case, which includes, every state, and also going back as far as 1998 in Utah. So the First Amendment has been, pushing for LGBTQ plus speech and conduct from the beginning because it's conduct and speech. Students have also found success in invoking these protections against schools. For example, in a 2000 case, Doe ex rel. Doe versus Euntis, a state court in Massachusetts found that a school cannot censor a transgender's student identity affirming speech by refusing to allow the student to wear clothing that affirmed and expressed her gender identity, which is kind of what we talked about before. The school was trying to prevent her from wearing the clothes that fit her gender identity, and the court was like, that's part of her freedom of speech expression, so you can't actually do that. And of course, the First Amendment has also been invoked in military cases. So, for example, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was, federally questioned in the federal courts because it restricted First Amendment rights to come out, to say, I am, bi, and then you can't say it. You can be bi, but you can't say that you're bi, and then you can be in the military. It was an explicit restriction on speech, and that's why it got overturned. And later, the injunction put on Trump's transgender ban in the military also used the First Amendment because it prevented trans people from saying, I am trans, and serving in the military. Similarly, for people, seeking medical treatment, the idea that doctors get to discriminate, based on their religious views. So, for example, a very strict Catholic doctor might not want to serve a transgender person in gender-affirming surgery, or might not want to help out a gay person from whatever. Courts have pretty much ruled that, well, you're preventing them from coming out speech because they have to hide that. They can't say it to you because otherwise they could not get the health care that they need. And that would be a pretty extreme chilling effect. The idea that you would be prevented from saying something about yourself to a doctor out of the fear that they're not going to help you or treat you the way that they would treat anybody else. Bringing this kind of full circle back to the chilling effect thing. So there's tons more examples and tons more ways that the First Amendment has protected LGBTQ plus people, but I would be remiss not to mention that, of course, the First Amendment also protects people who are advocating against LGBTQ plus protections and policies. So the First Amendment protects everybody. It doesn't have a particular side on this issue. That's not what I'm trying to say. Of course, the Westboro Baptist people can hold up their homophobic signs, and the First Amendment is what grants them. Oftentimes, when we talk about the First Amendment, we immediately go to the Westboro Baptist example when we think about LGBTQ plus things in the First Amendment. And I think we kind of undervalue and underappreciate how much the First Amendment has been invoked to protect LGBTQ plus people. Partially because it's been overshadowed, like I said, by the 14th Amendment, equal protection and due process clauses, but also because we, at Supreme Court cases, more than we do federal or state cases, typically, like in schools when you're learning about this stuff, or even when people, like content creators, are talking about it. I know for myself, I usually talk about the Supreme Court because it applies to everybody, like every state in the US. So it covers more people. versus like a state court case only applies to that state. But that doesn't make it any less important, especially because federal court cases and state court cases often do impact future Supreme Court case decisions. And here we've seen it was granted in the Supreme Court case. It said it was reconnecting. So I don't know how much of that got lost. But just to sum up, I basically wanted to put out there this video to talk more about how the First Amendment has both, allowed for the promotion and protection of LGBTQ plus people, as much as kind of the 14th Amendment has, providing examples with state cases and federal court cases, as well as Supreme Court cases, and without, missing the notion that, of course, it protects people who do not support LGBTQ plus issues, like people in the Westboro Baptist Church, or larger organizations like the Catholic Church, who occasionally hold like anti-LGBTQ plus rallies and say things. Of course, it protects them as well to say those things. But I really think it's underappreciated how much the First Amendment has done for members of the LGBTQ plus myself. And I think it's important to acknowledge it because in the future, when we're arguing for the promotion of equality and protections, we should not forget to use the First Amendment in future court cases or to protect ourselves against discrimination in the workplace that we might face or in schools. I think it's important to remember that you do have rights, not just under the 14th Amendment, but under the First Amendment too. I hope everybody has a happy Memorial Day weekend and a happy Pride Month coming up in June. And I will see you next time. Bye.